say the river forgets, but some rivers remember not just faces, not just cries, but the hands that pushed. In the village of Mboko, where the wind carries both prayer and rumor, there once lived a man named Malik. He used to dance under the moon, singing lullabies to a child he hadn't met yet. His love for Naima, his first wife, was the kind of love that made even the gods jealous. Fierce, gentle, endless. But love is fragile. And when Naima died giving birth, Malik, shattered like clay, left too long in the sun. All he had left was Amaara, a baby girl with her mother's eyes and her father's heartbeat. He promised to raise her with everything he had left inside him. But 6 moons later, another woman came, not to love the child, not to hold her, but to erase her. She looked him in the eyes and said, "The river took your baby." And Malik believed her, because grief can make a man deaf to the truth. But 5 years later, on that same riverbank, a little girl appeared, alone, quiet, with no memory of her name, but eyes that remembered everything. She called herself Hope. But one day, she looked up at Malik and whispered, "Call me Amaara. What comes next isn't a ghost story. It's a reckoning, a tale of silence, of betrayal, and of a river that refused to keep secrets. Welcome to Tales of Black, where truth doesn't knock, it returns." The air in Mboko felt heavy, as if the sky itself was holding onto a secret. Not because of rain. It hadn't rained in 3 weeks, but because silence had settled over rooftops, through tree branches, and inside every beating heart. The birds stopped singing, the wind forgot how to blow. Even the leaves made no sound. They buried Naima before the sun touched the western ridge, wrapped in white cloth, the color of mourning in Mboko. Her hair was braided neatly, just the way she liked, and on her lips lingered the faintest smile, as if she'd whispered a goodbye to the gods before slipping away. The funeral drums echoed through the village that day, but nothing was louder than the weak cries of a newborn and the silence of a man who had just lost his wife and his soul. Malik stood there, tall, dark from the sun, his hands calloused like the earth beneath him. He didn't shed a single tear, not because he wasn't in pain, but because the pain had drained even the tears from him. He just stared at the fresh mound of earth where the woman he loved now lay. Naima, his wife, his friend, his companion during dry season nights when all they had was prayer. He used to tell her, "When our child is born, I'll sing to them. I'll teach them to name the winds, to listen to the water's voice, and they'll grow up wrapped in our love." But now he was alone, with nothing but a wailing child in his arms, crying not just from the cold, but maybe from knowing her mother was never coming back. That night, Malik didn't sleep. He sat beside the fire, holding the newborn in his arms. The wind whispered through the thatched roof, and he said softly, almost to himself, "You are all I have left, Amaara. I don't know how to be a father, but I swear I'll love you with both my heart and your mother's." The fire flickered, casting shadows across the baby's face. Her eyes, tiny, clear, looked just like Naima's. And in that moment, Malik knew he wasn't dead, not yet. He still had a reason to breathe. The next morning, he began doing what no man in Mboko dared to do. He wrapped swaddles changed cloths, rocked the child to sleep. When other men laughed, calling it a woman's work, Malik simply replied, "If you lost your wife on the day your daughter was born, you'd learn how to hold her without shaking." And so his life began to orbit around the only two things he had left: work and love. He was doing fine until another woman walked into his home, not to carry the weight with him, but to bury the past. And Amaara began to disappear. For the first time, 6 months after they buried Naima, Malik did something that stirred the entire village of Mboko. He took a new wife, not a gentle widow from the next village, not a distant cousin willing to raise his daughter as her own, but Sadid, a woman with eyes sharp as carving knives and skin smooth like the shell of a mahogany nut. She walked like the ground bowed beneath her feet. People whispered. The elders shook their heads. The young ones murmured, "The grass hasn't even grown on his wife's grave, and he's already brought another woman home." Only one person had the courage to speak out loud: Jabari, Malik's childhood friend, the one who used to herd cattle with him. One evening, Jabari came to Malik's home. The oil lamp flickered softly. Amaara was already asleep. "Malik, what are you doing?" His voice was low, but heavy, like a stone dropped in still water. "She's barely been gone a full moon. Why the rush?" Malik sat in silence, then set his cup down and said, "I know, but Amaara needs a mother, Jabari. A baby can't grow up with nothing but a man's rough hands." Jabari stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head gently. "Sometimes it's those rough hands that protect more than you think. And not everyone who walks in wearing white comes with pure intentions." Saud entered Malik's life like a sudden downpour in dry season. At first, she was gentle. She kissed Amaara's cheek, poured water for Malik after long days in the field. She sang lullabies, though the songs felt hollow. What started like cool water slowly turned to stone. Within weeks, the sweetness soured. Said began to snap. "This baby cries all night. I didn't marry you to be a wet nurse. She's not my child. Every time I look at her, I see the shadow of the dead." Malik held back. He kept hoping that time would soften Sadeh's heart, that one day she'd understand what it meant to be a mother. But time didn't soften her. It turned her colder, and Amaara, still just a baby, began to feel it. The warmth in the house was no longer hers. One night, after Malik rocked Amaara to sleep and gently laid her in the wooden cradle he carved with his own hands, he turned and saw Sadeh standing in the dark, still, silent, staring at the child. "You know," she said, her voice cold like a night with no moon, "if I ever have a child, I won't let it be this much of a burden." Malik said nothing. He bowed his head, brushed Amaara's hair, and sighed. That night, for the first time, Malik heard a voice in his sleep. It wasn't a baby's cry, it was Naima. "Malik, don't let her lose more than she already has. You kept your promise to love me. Now, keep the one to protect Amaara." He jolted awake, heart pounding, shirt soaked in sweat. Across the room, Saud was sleeping peacefully, as if nothing in this world had ever touched her conscience. That afternoon, the Mboko sun burned like it had something to prove. The air pressed heavy against the chest, thick, unmoving. Even the trees stood still, as if they knew something was coming and didn't want to be involved. Sade walked into the kitchen, wiped the sweat from her brow, and spoke in a voice sweeter than usual. "Malik, it's so hot today. Why don't you take Amaara down to the river? Let her get some fresh air. It'll be good for her." Malik looked at his daughter, kicking playfully in the cradle. She smiled up at him, as if she understood her stepmother's words. He nodded and gently lifted Amaara into his arms. The Obasi River curled through the forest like a silver snake. Its water glistened under the noon sun, so calm it almost felt suspicious. Malik sat beneath a tree, cradling his babbling daughter. A soft breeze swept off the river, cooling his face. Amaara giggled, her tiny fingers tugging on his beard. He chuckled, his heart light for the first time in days. Sade stood nearby, one hand on her hip, eyes fixed somewhere in the distance. Then, as if something just occurred to her, she turned back. "Love, I just spotted some healing herbs right there in those bushes. They're good for headaches. Would you mind picking some? I'll watch the baby." Malik didn't hesitate. He laid Amaara gently on the mat beside him and walked into the thicket. Now, it was just Sadie and the child. She turned around, her gaze falling on Amaara, who was playing with her fingers, eyes gleaming, full of light. Pure, innocent, too innocent. And that is what made Sadie uneasy. She bent down and lifted the baby into her arms. "Why do you keep making me see her?" she whispered, voice trembling. "That dead woman." Her eyes no longer looked like those of a mother. They burned with something darker, older, ripe with jealousy. Without hesitation, she stepped toward the river's edge. The Obasi waters still whispered, as if they knew nothing, as if they were waiting. A sharp movement, a splash, a ripple across the surface. Amaara slipped from her arms. No scream, no cry, just a soft sound, like a sigh cut short. And then, silence. Sade collapsed to the ground, clawed at her face, tore her clothes, then screamed like a woman whose soul had just been stolen. Malik came rushing back, herbs still in hand. He saw her on the ground, face streaked with tears and dust, gasping for breath. "What happened? Where's Amaara?" Sade wailed. She slipped from my hands. I tried to hold on, but the current? It was too strong. She's gone." She sobbed, loud, wild, her chest heaving as if the grief would kill her. Malik stood frozen. His eyes scanned the water. There was nothing, just a tiny wooden bracelet, the one he'd carved for his daughter, floating, drifting, then gone. He fell to his knees at the river's edge. "Amaara, my child, this is my fault. I should have never left you." Villagers arrived, drawn by the sound of mourning. They saw Malik's grief. They heard Sade's cries. And no one doubted. Who would? Who questions a woman sobbing like her heart had been torn apart? Who dares believe that the river took nothing at all? Only the trees stood still. Only the wind changed direction. And maybe, just maybe, only the Obasi River remembered everything. After the Obasi River took his only child, Malik became a shadow of himself. He worked the fields, he ate, he slept, but only to pass the days. Inside him, everything had rotted. No more Amaara's laughter, no more dreams of hearing her call him Papa. Just an aching void that no village medicine could fill. Sade was different. She returned to life quickly, too quickly. She even seemed cheerful. "Malik," she said one day, smiling, eyes bright with something unreadable, "I heard an old woman from the next village has herbs that help with fertility. Maybe we should try." Malik nodded, didn't speak. He no longer had the will to argue or the strength to doubt. But then, strange things began to happen. The first night, Malik was fast asleep when a sound woke him, a baby crying. He sat up, heart pounding, looked over at Said. She was sound asleep. He stepped outside. There was only wind, and the silver blade of moonlight spilled across the dirt like a warning. The second night, the crying returned, closer, clearer, and this time he heard a voice, a lullaby, whispered, almost sung. "Amaara, Amaara, my love, sleep now. The water's not cold anymore." Malik froze. That voice, he knew it. It was Naima's. Impossible. He ran barefoot toward the Obasi River, sharp stones biting into his skin. No one was there, only a small, wet bracelet washed up on the shore, just like the one he once carved for Amaara. The next morning, Malik placed the bracelet on the table. He stared at it as if waiting for it to speak. It didn't. It just sat there, a quiet reminder that refused to disappear. When Said walked in and saw it, she flinched, just a little, then laughed. "There are dozens of kids around here with bracelets like that. Don't let your mind wander." Malik looked at her for a long time, and for the first time in years, his gaze wasn't dull with grief, but sharp with suspicion. "You said she slipped from your hands. You cried until you collapsed, remember?" Said froze, then composed herself, as if she'd rehearsed. "Are you accusing me, Malik? Keep this up, and you're going to lose your mind." The third night, Malik didn't sleep. He sat beside the dying embers, watching the red glow. The baby's cry never came, but a gust of cold air swept through the cracks in the wall, and the flame danced wildly. In the flicker, he thought he saw a small figure, a child, waving, lips moving. "Papa, I'm still here." From that night on, something shifted. Every night, something felt off. Tiny footsteps on the dirt floor, soft giggles behind the curtain, the faint smell of Naima's perfume drifting from the kitchen, though no one had cooked in days. Malik stopped sleeping, stopped thinking. Maybe he was losing his mind, or maybe he was waking up. And Said? She began to dream, night after night, the same image, a soaking wet child standing at the foot of her bed, not speaking, just staring, eyes so deep you couldn't lie in front of them if you tried. One morning, she woke shivering, even under thick blankets, with the fire still burning. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Malik didn't turn to her. He just said, "No, I didn't hear a thing, but I'm sure you did." On the fourth night, a sudden off-season storm struck Mboko. Lightning ripped across the sky. The wind howled like mourning spirits. The entire village tossed in restless sleep. Everyone except Malik. He stayed awake. He knew something was coming back, not for revenge, but to open the eyes of those who had kept them shut for far too long. That afternoon, the Mboko heat was so thick, even the birds stopped singing. Malik had just returned from the fields, his body aching from the sun and labor, when he saw Said lying in the shade, waving a palm fan lazily. "I feel exhausted," she sighed. "Could you fetch some water for me? Just one calabash. The Obasi River's not far." Malik nodded. He didn't ask questions. He grabbed the old calabash, wrapped a cloth around his head, and walked quietly away. Dust rose with every step, like memories that refused to stay buried after 5 long years. The path to Obasi hadn't changed. It still curved around the ancient tamarind, cut through brittle grass, and ended at a cool stretch of stone by the river's edge. Malik knelt, dipped the calabash into the clear water, and stared at his own wavering reflection. Then a voice, soft, unsteady, like wind, but human. "Sir, can you help me?" Malik turned sharply. Just beyond the shade of a tree stood a little girl, no older than 5. Her hair was tangled, clothes worn thin, feet covered in dust. But her eyes, those deep brown eyes, stopped his breath cold. "Who are you? Who's with you?" Malik asked, stepping closer. She looked down, whispering, "I don't know. I don't remember my name. I don't remember my village. I don't know where my parents are." Malik knelt before her, studying her face. There was something familiar. Not her features, but her presence, like a song he once heard in a dream. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "Do you want to come with me? I can't leave you here alone." The girl nodded, her small fingers wrapped around his hand, like they'd been waiting for that exact hand all her life. When they reached the house, Said was outside, washing clothes. The moment she saw the child, her expression faltered. "Who's this?" she snapped, a mix of suspicion and something else. "A little girl I found near the river. She remembers nothing. I couldn't let her starve out there." Malik's voice was quiet, firm. Said hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. But her eyes stayed locked on the girl like she was staring at a ghost. That night, Malik laid out a mat beside the fire and tucked the girl in. She curled up, sleeping as peacefully as if she'd always belonged there. Malik sat nearby, watching her face flicker in the firelight. His heart ached with something unexplainable. And then, almost without thinking, he whispered, "Your name and will be Hope, because you came like a spark of light, and I need you." Within days, the village began to murmur, "Where did Malik find that child?" She doesn't talk much, doesn't cry. Those eyes, it's like they already know everything. Hope was not like other children. She didn't fuss, didn't demand. She watched quietly. And when Malik looked into her eyes, he saw Naima. One evening, as they worked together to repair the leaky roof, Hope looked up and said, "Papa, don't call me Hope anymore." Malik froze. "Why? You don't like the name?" She smiled, not the smile of a 5-year-old, but the smile of memory, returning from a place beyond the living. "My name is Amaara." Malik went still. The hammer slipped from his hand, landing on the earth with a dull, final thud. Wind stirred, leaves rustled. The fire flared, then died. He stared at the child before him, mouth dry, voice barely a whisper. What did you just say?" Hope, or Amaara, looked him in the eyes and softly repeated, "Papa, I came back." After that night, Malik didn't sleep. He sat beside the cold ashes of the fire, eyes wide open, staring into nothing. The wooden hammer still lay where it had fallen, silent, heavy, like the truth itself. And those words, "My name is Amaara," he had heard them. Clearly, it wasn't a dream, it wasn't an echo. It was real, soft, warm, steady, like a blade gently piercing the center of his chest. The next morning, when Amaara woke up, Malik didn't say a word. He simply placed a bowl of porridge in front of her, watching the way she bowed her head in thanks, the way she ate with her right hand, just like her mother had taught her. Every gesture was a memory reborn. That afternoon, without a word to say, Malik left the house. He carried with him the wooden bracelet, the only thing that had survived the day his daughter was taken. And he went to the one man he had once pushed away, Jabari. Jabari was splitting firewood behind his home when he saw Malik standing silently by the gate, cradling the bracelet in both hands. His old friend looked thinner, his hair now touched with gray. But his eyes, they still held that same truth, that same fire, that same ache. "I was wrong," Malik said without preamble. "I didn't know, but now I fear I know too much." They sat beneath the baobab tree. Two men, few words, each sentence cutting into 5 years of silence. Malik told him everything about hope, the eyes, the voice. "I came back, Papa," and then he placed the bracelet into Jabari's hand, still damp with river memory. Jabari stared at it, frozen. "Do you think she really is Amaara?" "Not reborn," he added quietly, "but kept, preserved, and returned to you when you needed her most." Malik nodded, his lips trembling. "I'm not sure, but if it's true, it means I've lived with the one who took her for 5 long years." That evening, Jabari led Malik to the edge of the village to see Mama Eshe, the old priestess, the one who people whispered could speak with the spirits of the river. Mama Eshe didn't ask questions. She looked Malik in the eyes and simply nodded. "There is a child who never died, a river that never forgot, and a man who must now choose to believe or continue living blind." Then she said, "At sunrise, go to the Obasi River. Bring a piece of white cloth. Call your child's name 3 times. If she is truly who you think, you will be answered." That night, Malik did not sleep. The wind howled. The oil lamp flickered like it was eavesdropping on ghosts. Said tossed and turned, muttering in her sleep. Malik sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside. His hand clenched the white cloth, and his heart clenched a question no one in Mboko had ever dared to answer. Dawn had not yet broken. Malik left the house barefoot, the white cloth folded in his hands. He walked through the sleeping village, past thatched roofs and shuttered windows, accompanied only by the crow of distant roosters and the wind slipping through straw eaves. No one saw him, but Obasi did. At the river's edge, the water lay still, like a mirror untouched. No ripples, no fish leaping, just a heavy mist settling over the surface like a burial shroud yet to be lifted. Malik knelt. He laid the white cloth gently at the water's edge, closed his eyes, placed a hand over his heart, and called out, "Amaara." Once, the wind stirred. "Amaara." Twice, the water began to ripple. "Amaara." A third time, the river moved. From the center of Obasi, where the first light of morning pierced the mist, a figure began to rise. The river goddess, her hair flowed like currents. Her eyes were deep as the abyss. Her body shimmered, not of flesh, but of river soul, clear, cold, beautiful in a way that frightened even silence. She did not walk, she drifted, and the surface of the water trembled beneath her like it remembered everything. Malik trembled too. He pressed his palms together, bowed deeply. Please, please, I just want to know. My daughter, Amaara, is she alive? Is she? Her voice broke the mist, low, resonant, gentle, and absolute. Amaara did not die. The one who birthed her perished. The one who envied her, killed. Malik gasped. Said, was it her? The goddess nodded, slowly. The woman you married carried your child to this river and cast her like a stone. She cried, but not from grief. It was a performance. Malik collapsed, hands digging into the soil. His chest convulsed like it was being squeezed by grief itself. She's gone? The goddess drifted closer, knelt, and placed a cool hand on Malik's brow. I kept her. Not dead, not forgotten. I raised her in the womb of the river until she was strong enough to return. Because your heart never closed. Malik wept. Tears he couldn't hold back flooded down his face. I trusted the wrong one. I let my child fall into the hands of a monster. I don't deserve to be her father. The goddess studied him, not with anger, not with pity, but with ancient understanding. You are a father, and fathers go blind when pain swallows the light. But you called her name again, and when a father calls his child from his heart, the river answers. As she began to fade, she spoke once more. Amaara now carries the strength of both worlds. Do not fear her eyes, for within them are memories, truths, and a fire that will burn through every lie. A white wave rose and swept the cloth far across the surface. Then, silence. Malik was alone, kneeling. His tears soaked into earth, into river, into the vow he made beneath the sky. I'm sorry, Amaara. From this day forward, no one will ever touch you again. By the time Malik returned, the sun was already leaning west. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt soaked with river water, and in his hand he still clutched the wooden bracelet. Inside him, a storm was gathering. The name Amaara was no longer a memory. It was a truth risen. He stepped inside. Amaara, no longer hope, was sitting quietly by the hearth, peeling sweet potatoes with a small wooden knife. The firelight danced across her face, and in her eyes reflected the river, deep, still, and ancient. Malik knelt before her. I know now, he whispered. She looked up, not surprised, just nodded softly. You called my name. I heard you. Outside, Said sat on the porch, filing her nails with a smooth river stone. When she saw Malik and Hope step out, she squinted. What's with all the drama? That girl's been acting strange lately. Keeps looking at me like she wants to burn a hole through my chest. Malik turned to her. His gaze no longer tired, no longer afraid, but clear. Saad, he said. What? She snapped, still staring at the girl. She's not Hope. Her real name is Amaara. Silence. The words dropped like a stone into a deep, dark well. Said froze. What did you just say? Malik stepped forward. My daughter, the one you claimed was swept away by the river, is standing right in front of you, alive, remembering, and ready to speak. Said shot to her feet, face pale. You're insane, Malik. You found some stray girl and let her spin fairy tales, and you believed her? That's when Amaara stepped forward, slowly, eyes locked on Said. "The dead don't lie," she said calmly. "But I was never dead." Her voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry, just final. I remember that day. My stepmother told my father to fetch herbs, then carried me to the river. Sade backed away, her mouth trembling. "She's lying. She's making this up." "No," Amaara said. "I'm just remembering. You said I made you tired. You said you didn't marry Papa to be a nursemaid. Then you threw me in." Her words fell like stones, even precise, cold. Sade screamed, "You're not Amaara. You're some orphan in disguise. You came here to destroy my family." Amaara took one more step. Her eyes flickered, not with fire, but with something deeper, awakening. "This was my home before you came, and now I've returned to reclaim my name." Sade trembled, her gaze wild, like someone staring into a ghost. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted. "I'm not afraid of any spirit." Amaara tilted her head, studying her like a curious animal. "You should be. Not because I'm a ghost, but because I am truth. And truth always finds its way home." That night, the entire village heard Sade screaming in her sleep. She bolted upright in bed, crying out, "Don't look at me like that. Don't follow me. I didn't mean to. I just wanted—" Malik didn't go to her. He simply sat at the doorstep, holding the wooden bracelet. Beside him, Amaara sat in silence. No words, no tears, just the wind whispering through the roof, and a voice that only the guilty ever hear. "I remember, and I will not forget." The sun rose slowly that morning. The trees in Mboko stood unnaturally still, as if they too were holding their breath. People passed by Malik's home, whispering more than usual. Ever since the child called Hope had claimed the name Amaara, something in the air had changed. Sade was no longer herself. She drifted through the house like a ghost, eyes sunken, lips murmuring things no one could fully hear. At night, she muttered in her sleep. By day, she stared into the mirror and whispered, "You're not her. You can't be her. She died. I threw her. I used my own hands." And then, what no one expected happened. That afternoon, with the sun scorching the village like fire, Sade burst into the courtyard, hair wild, eyes wide, screaming, not at anyone, but at memory, at guilt, at a river that had never forgiven. "I killed her. It was me," she cried. "I couldn't stand the way she looked at me with Naima's eyes. She made me mad. I hated her the moment she cried that first night." Villagers came running, forming a silent circle. No one spoke. They simply watched the woman unravel before the eyes of the gods. Sade fell to the ground, clawing the earth as if she could bury her own sins. Malik stepped out, quiet, steady. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger had long since been burned away by grief. Sade crawled toward him, grabbing at his feet, sobbing. "Forgive me, Malik. I only wanted you to love me. I couldn't bear how you held that girl like a treasure. I didn't think she would survive. I never thought the river would give her back." Malik didn't speak. He simply looked at her, as one might look at a ruin from a forgotten war. The woman he once called wife was now nothing more than the remains of envy. Sade screamed one final time, "She's not a child. She's a ghost. She came back to kill me." Amaara stepped outside, not like a spirit, but like a living, breathing child. She looked directly at Sade, her eyes calm, not angry, just beyond it all. I don't need to kill anyone. Truth did that for me. Sage shrieked, slammed her head against the wooden post. Blood trickled. Her mouth poured out words no one could make sense of. Then she ran into the woods, screaming like a soul unmoored. I haven't lost. I won't let her live. I'll come back. But she didn't. She vanished into the forest, swallowed by the rustling leaves and the last flickers of daylight. No one followed, not because they weren't afraid of what she might do, but because they believed in the laws of the land, the water, and the spirits. Those who commit evil by the river are often taken by the river again. That evening, Malik sat on the porch. Amaara leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Neither spoke. They just stared down the dirt path leading into the woods, a road no one was waiting for anyone to return from. Papa, Amaara whispered. Yes, my love? Malik turned, his hand gently tightening around her shoulder. If someone gets lost, but somehow finds their way back, are they still the same person? Malik paused. The silence held them like a cradle. Then he answered softly, No, they're someone new, but the one fate always meant for them to become. Sade was gone. For 3 days, no one saw her. No screaming, no footprints. Not even the cheap perfume she used to wear lingered in the air. The elders whispered, Those who wrong the Obasi River are led by the forest to a place where no one remembers their name. Malik didn't search for her, not out of coldness, but because he knew some people don't want to be found. Inside the house, everything was quiet, but not empty. Amaara helped her father sweep the kitchen, lay old mats in the sun, gather ashes from nights once haunted, and toss them behind the garden, where ghosts no longer belonged. One morning, as they planted cassava together in the yard, Malik paused, his voice low. Do you resent me? Amaara looked up, her cheeks smudged with earth, but her smile bright, like first light after a long storm. I never resented you, Papa. I was just waiting for you to remember who I was. Malik lowered his head, his eyes burned. I remember every part of you, and this time no one will ever take you from me again. After Sade's disappearance, something shifted. The trees in Malik's garden turned green again. The withered vines bore new shoots. Even the old hen, silent for 3 years, clucked loudly one morning and laid an egg. Villagers began to stop by. They didn't say much. One brought a basket of mangoes, another a bundle of healing leaves. Someone left behind an old pair of sandals for Amaara. No explanations, just bowed heads, quiet offerings, because sometimes redemption doesn't come in words. It comes in presence and intention. That night, Amaara sat by the fire, spinning the wooden bracelet her father had carved. Papa, yes? If a child was once thrown away, but somehow survived, could she become something greater than herself? Malik smiled, poured more water into the kettle. She doesn't need to become greater. She only needs to live true to the name she was born with. That's enough. Amaara nodded, then leaned against his shoulder. For the first time in years, Malik closed his eyes and did not dream of water, or crying, or hands sinking beneath the river. He dreamt of harvest, of sunlight, of his daughter running through golden fields. He dreamt of a life no longer owed in blood. The next morning, they rose early. Amaara wore a patched shirt and the bracelet on her wrist. She walked into the yard beside Malik. Together they planted, laughed, named each row like naming hope that had yet to bloom. And when the rain came, Malik tilted his face to the sky, letting it wash over him, salted, warm, like the tears of a father who once lost his child and held her reborn in his arms. That year, the dry season came late, and the village of Mboko stood in awe as green rice sprouted early on Malik's hillside field. Whispers floated on the wind. He must have done something with the river. That child, she carries something sacred. Amaara was no longer the quiet girl from before. Each morning, she carried water from the stream, greeted old women with a gentle smile, laughed with children flying kites. Everyone knew who she was, the girl who came back from the river. But no one called her a ghost because her eyes were too alive. One day, the village chief invited Malik to the community square. Everyone gathered, elders, women, children. In the center, Amaara stood beside her father, gripping the wooden bracelet, eyes bright, not afraid. She stood like someone who had walked through the dark and returned. The village chief spoke, his voice trembling with something close to reverence. We once thought this girl was a stranger, but today, Mboko stands here to say we were wrong. Sometimes, we don't need to know where a child comes from, only that she stayed. Then he turned to Malik. Would you like to give her a new name so she can have papers, a place, a future with a name that belongs? Malik looked at his daughter. Amaara looked back. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, everything was said. Malik turned to the crowd, his voice steady like a tree with deep roots. Her name never died. Her name is Amaara, which means one who is never lost. And I will not change it, because that name is what led her home. Silence, then applause. People clapped. Some cried. Some smiled. Amaara bowed deeply, not to ask for forgiveness, but to accept them as those who would remember her name instead of trying to forget it. That night, Malik sat by the fire, holding his daughter close. The flames burned slow and even. No shadows lurked at the door. No crying echoed from the river. Amaara spoke softly. Papa, if one day I grow up and leave this village, will anyone still remember who I am? Malik placed a hand on her head, his voice low, like a prayer. Your name doesn't live in someone else's mouth. It lives in how you walk, in how you forgive, and in the scar you choose not to hide. A breeze passed through, the scent of wood smoke, roasted cassava, and earth after rain. And somewhere above the village of Mboko, a name was lit once more, with life, with memory, and with a heart that never gave up. Some children return, not for revenge, but to remind us, a name doesn't live in paperwork. It lives in the wounds that survived. If you've ever been silent, forgotten, or called everything but your name, leave a comment. It doesn't have to be long. Just say, I'm still here, because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is still waiting to see themselves in your eyes. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, so that every time a name is buried, we can call it back together. This is Tales of Black, where black legends are not told in light, but in the darkness we've dared to walk through.